Hello and welcome to episode 67 of Celtic Rumours TV, the Bawz and Bovril podcast with your host Mark and myself Paul. You can check all our links to the podcast on the description below, and you can also check out our form to the page at celticrumours.co.uk. On today's show we will look at the latest news around the club. Leigh Griffiths is no longer a Celtic player. Past young Celtic talents who have left Celtic and never made it to the first team. How would they fare under Ange if they were still in the Celtic ranks? We look ahead to the Hibs game tomorrow night, predicted team lineups, score sheet, and any thoughts you guys have in the live chat, please let us know. Firstly, though, I'll hand off to Mark for a few shout outs.
Thanks very much, Paul. Just the usual shout outs, Paul, to Tim Alloy, Glasgow Green, the Rich and his family, Champsy Boy, John UI, and Bobby Sutherland in the live chat. Good to see you, Bobby. I had you there in my shout outs, bud. Mikey's still well as well, Paul. Don't know what's going to happen with him, man. He's signed off work for a few weeks yet, still, so still not saying he'll be back to his podcasting weight. So,
Christ.
that's for 521 subs, Paul. We're slowly creeping back up the way, so thanks very much to everybody that subs, for the guys that come in. And if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, and please hit the like button as well, the wee thumbs up button. Thanks very much.
Former Premier League defender and uncle to young Celtic Joey Dawson, Michael Dawson, has recently come out and said that he couldn't have asked for a better club for his nephew to learn his trade in the game. Michael said that the treatment that he has received since signing for Celtic in the summer has been exceptional, and that he's learning every day about his new role he needs to play as a striker. Bobby Madden will now referee Celtic vs Rangers game in February after the Scottish FA changed their schedule for referees. Has this anything to do with Rangers asking for Willie Cullum not to referee their matches in the past? Big Ange has added Anton Ortega to the sports to science team after he was granted the work permit. Ortega has been brought in to assist with players' recruitment and opposition analysis. Anton worked in the previous role as a consultant for Benfica. Also, Celtic have added Stuart McLaren as Celtic FC under 18s manager. McLaren joined Celtic from the Scottish FA, where he coached Scotland's under 16 team. This move will now see Darren O'Dea move up to first team coach under Chris McCart in the Celtic coach team. That's all for the news. So Mark, I think, Mark, it's good that we see Celtic actually making progress behind the scenes, Mark, in the likes of player recruitment. Now we see Ortega coming in there, he's going to help with that, and we seem to be making progress too, Mark, in our youth academy, Mark. We seem to be hiring people in those roles as well.
Well, it's a bit slower than we'd expected. We wanted it to happen, Paul, but we're getting there slowly but surely, I suppose. We're adding these guys into the backroom staff and that, but there's still a lot of work to do there, Paul, I reckon. But at least we're starting to make some moves into that kind of field.
The thing when I was reading up on Ortega, Mark, the thing that gets me is he will help with player recruitment. So he's not head of recruitment. Do you get me? So we still actually don't have a head of recruitment.
No, for me it's like the kind of recruitment version of Gavin Stratton, really, isn't it? Gavin Stratton deals with all the data and stat analysis like in the game during the games and training and stuff like that, whereas this guy's more like looking at the stats and data, like potential signings kind of thing.
Yeah, and then working close with Ange and then, and he's also going to be analysing the opposition, what way they play, Mark. Like, I always thought, Mark, like in the modern football, that you do that anyway. Do you know what I mean?
That, yeah, you would think so, wouldn't you?
You'd analyse your opposition, like, you know what I mean? Playing Championship Manager or FIFA over the years, Mark, that when I was younger, like, I always had someone who would scout the opposition team. Like, you know, do Celtic not have someone in their ranks that does that?
Well, I'd have thought they would have, Paul. I don't know whether it's maybe it's a job like maybe Tommy McIntyre or somebody like that kind of took on, but I mean, obviously we've not kind of that somebody with that job title, that's what they do, like an opposition analyst or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I found very interesting as well was Michael Dawson coming out, Mark, speaking how highly regarded he has Celtic after his nephew Joey Dawson come to the club. The treatment he's received, the lauding he's received. He said he's already after coming a better player since moving up to Celtic. He seems to be getting more game time in the Coles team, scoring goals, and he's actually delighted. And it's good to hear, Mark, because in the podcast there we're talking about previous players who were left. Like, so we're starting to see young players actually being treated well now with Celtic as well, aren't we?
That's a refreshing change for me, Paul. I harp on about it all the time. We should be getting more out of our academy and that. It's good to hear that, like somebody coming out and talking well about us rather than what we've been reading over the last few months about the treatment of some of the young players.
As only one big player, Mark, we'll talk about later is Helda. The young Norwegian who moved to Leeds, and he was on the bench today, I believe, for Leeds, and he seems to be getting more game time for Leeds than he ever did at Celtic.
He played for them the other night, Paul.
Yeah.
I think it was in the Carabao Cup thing, right enough. But fair dues, he still got a game, and just like editing on the Leeds site and that. I never seen the guy getting any bad kind of. Do you know what I mean? There's nobody kind of saying, "Oh, what's this kind of."
But that's what, Mark. Do you know what I mean? Like, you see clubs down the south like who use this opportunity, the Carabao Cup, they use this opportunity to give their young players game time. But we always want our young players to get that game time in these cups. But then it's the chance, Mark. Then if Celtic lose, they're going to blame the manager for playing a weakened side. I mean that's the fear I think managers have at Celtic. Like, every game is a must-win game, and you must feed your strongest team.
But the big teams down in England, Paul, they don't care about that Carabao Cup. Whereas really up here, it's really some of the smaller teams. St Johnstone won 2 cups, which is fantastic for a club like St Johnstone. But really, it comes down again to Celtic and Rangers, because the majority of times, if Celtic don't win it, Rangers. Do you get what I mean? It's that. So every trophy's important up in Scotland, whereas down in England, I mean, that Carabao Cup had make any much money off it and things like that. So, I mean, they've been doing that. They've used that cup as a kind of breeding ground for years down there, Paul. It was Alex Ferguson first started, I think.
Oh, sure, he started with the youths. Yeah, he was the one who kind of brought in the kind of youths into that team, Mark. He was kind of breeding in the lads for years into the car, and he still continued to do that, Mark, didn't he?
Aye, definitely. You know? But I've said it before as well, Paul. But there's enough teams in our league that we should be able to play games like what we're talking about, just playing some youngsters. I've said that 100 times to you, Paul. You're playing teams at the bottom of the league and that, especially at Celtic Park, where you're going to be dominating. There's nothing wrong with maybe chopping the team a bit and putting maybe 2 or 3 young players onto the park and having another couple on the bench.
Exactly. I suppose the breaking news this week that broke last night is that Celtic have decided to terminate the rest of Leigh Griffiths' contract. In 2003, Leigh Griffiths joined Celtic for an undisclosed fee, winning 7 titles, 3 Scottish Cups, 4 League Cups, scored an incredible 123 goals for Celtic, but off-field issues and struggled with mental health became the demon of Leigh Griffiths' career at Celtic. Mark, I think there's no doubt anyone is questioning the quality of Leigh Griffiths here, you know what I mean? Like, on his day, still to this day, I think Leigh Griffiths is one of the best finishers in Scotland, but it's just come to a point, Mark, where we have to call our losses here now, don't we?
Oh, we should have done it before now, Paul, but finally it's actually been done. I read something today that Griffiths is, what is it, only the 4th player for the Lisbon Lions. He's only the 4th player to score 100 goals for us. I think it was Charlie Nicholas, Kenny Dalglish, and Henry Collins. I think maybe I picked up, but it was maybe the 4th or 5th, but it was round about that. And you can't grumble with his goal scoring, Paul. But I think of the goals that he should have scored for is the amount of games that he's missed. If he says the mental health, that's totally
That's different, Mark.
That's different, but talk about his problems he's brought on himself.
What really got me, Mark, with Leigh Griffiths was turning up after lockdown for pre-season training unfit, overweight, unfit. Like, it's unacceptable, Mark. No, for a professional player to turn up for pre-season unfit, like, you know, it's.
Paul, see when Lennon came out and said that about him, did they not start again? Like, maybe 7 days later, or something like 8 days later, or something. So I couldn't have been that out of shape, Paul.
Oh, there's definitely, Mark. There's definitely ongoing issues between, because you know that fella you were talking about, Mark, who's Neil Lennon.
The guy on Twitter, he's always in that kind of dig about Griffiths and that.
I don't know if you actually saw the tweet I sent to him today. And I normally wouldn't use the Twitter, Mark, because I'm the same as I just use it for the podcast and that. But I sent him a tweet. I said, he was saying, oh, Leigh Griffiths is a great player, or this and that, but on and off field issues, stuff. And I said, I just emailed, text back, said, Neil, give us a break. I said, give us the real reasons why you fell out with Leigh Griffiths. I said, off field issues is a different problem. I said, but you played him and then you dropped him. So something happened in the dressing room, and that's what we want to know. But I still didn't get a reply. But
well, at least you asked. I found out on Twitter last night you can boil your legs in an air fryer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not all bad. I've not tried it yet because the wife's not too sure about it in case they're going to blow up. But it shows you Twitter's not full of idiots if somebody's telling me that.
But Mark, he had a chance.
She's done 10 chances, Paul.
Yeah, and do you know what I was thinking today when about Ange and about Celtic and Nicholson? Like, the only one reason he got this contract, Mark, at the start of the year is because we had no squad, and that's basically it. And then when I think Leigh Griffiths' personal problems again came into thing, they put him out on loan, and that's when I knew that Celtic had a manager in Ange, no, Mark, that he's not going to put up with a player who's going to put unrest into his dressing room. I think Ange is a manager, Mark, who wants a happy dressing room, a calm dressing room, not in distress. And I think Ange now saw Leigh Griffiths coming back, Mark, would upset the dressing room.
It's like, we don't know the character of the players really, Paul. So there'll be guys in that dressing room that are probably just as daft as Leigh Griffiths. Scott Brown, he was as daft as a brush kind of idea, wasn't he? But he was a ultimate professional.
Mark.
So you can be that kind of jokery guy in the dressing room and be outspoken and be one of the lads and that, but you still need to work at training, you still need to work on the park.
Mm-hmm.
If you're producing on the park, producing in training and no ripping the pee out the manager, that manager's going to pick you every week. Because he can rely on you.
And another thing too, Mark, is I actually, with the intensity now, Mark, we see under Ange at Celtic and Griffiths being the wrong side of 30 now. He's 31, like he's not young anymore. Could you have ever seen Leigh Griffiths peaking in his fitness now if he was given this chance under Ange?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he would ever be as I don't think he'd ever be as fit as he could have been. Do you know what I mean? He's too, maybe you say he's 31 now, he's maybe, but there would still be no reason for him to work hard and get as fit as he can be.
Like, it could have been an ideal season for Leigh Griffiths at Celtic, Mark, with injuries to Kyogo. We were struggling there without a striker. You know, if Leigh Griffiths was there, he could have filled that spot there for a cup, because he wouldn't have been a starter. He could have been an impact sub-mark or something like that. He could have had a role to play.
Right, definitely.
But Leigh Griffiths again decided not to go down that road. But Mark,
probably one of the best set piece takers as well at the club, Paul. Even his corners and his free kicks and stuff like that.
And we see that this season, Mark. Our set pieces this season, Mark, have been shocking. You know, we can't beat the first man. You know, and like, but where does it hold now, Mark? Like, where can you see Leigh Griffiths score? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if Dundee, Mark, are struggling at the bottom of the Premier League, and they're now thinking as well of releasing Leigh Griffiths from his contract, like, and if a team at the bottom of League, Mark, doesn't want Leigh Griffiths, Mark,
I mean,
seeing a lot now, Mark, about Leigh Griffiths and the type player he is, isn't it?
I mean, the Griffiths, you'd be expecting Griffiths to, but he's not good enough for Celtic. right? But
Yeah, I would have
no, but you'd have
Aberdeen,
that's what I was
Mark,
going to say.
Man,
That's
our teams, but
you definitely have thought like a team like even Hibs, but Hibs again. I mean, Hibs would have been an ideal move for him if he was doing well. Do you get what I mean? At that kind of level, but I think he's going to really struggle to get a Premier League team to take him on, Paul. I really do.
I
unless
think so,
unless it's going to be like a pay as you play
the
kind of deal.
the only thing, Mark, I can think of is if maybe Sean Maloney, as known Leigh Griffiths and known the type of player Leigh Griffiths is, like would he take him? But for me, Sean Maloney being
I
the
don't think.
first experience, Mark,
Oh,
in his magic career, like it's a big risk for Sean Maloney to take on the character of Leigh Griffiths, isn't it?
I know he's dealt with all these big stars for
Yeah,
Belgium, but Ed Martinez there kind of thing, as you say.
yeah.
I don't know, would Leigh Griffiths go to Hibs and try and like think, oh, here's a young guy that I've known all my days kind of thing, I'll get away with, you know what I mean? I'll get away with putting in half a shift here kind of thing again.
hmm Like,
I know there's a few chances in that, like there was some like championship teams down in England and that interested in him over the years, not for any great money or that kind of thing, but he was never really interested in getting back down to England. I think he was more like a homeboy. He wanted, well, obviously we know his situation, all his kids on the under the one roof and stuff like that, so he didn't want to be away from his kids and things like that, which is understandable. But even maybe that, moved down to England and now, just to get him away from up here, maybe be a good thing for him, but I don't think, I honestly, Paul, don't think he's a common sense to. I don't.
no, Mark. If he's not settled down now, Mark, you know what I mean. You're not. Do you know that kind of thing? He's not a young lad anymore, Mark. Do you know what I mean, he's 31 now. He's a grown man.
This isn't
Do you know what I mean?
this isn't a young 19-year-old you're trying to
Yeah, like
get a leash on. This is a guy that should be in your changing room as one of your more experienced players, Paul. It should
yeah,
be him leading by example kind of
lead
idea.
example. Like you see young players now, Mark, on Twitter, like doing stupid things, but then the managers will come out then and they'll say, right, I'll speak to him. I think, but you can't really say I'll speak to Leigh Griffiths. Like, I mean, Leigh Griffiths is good. He should know better, Mark. Do you get me?
My dad used to say to me, Paul, you're all the man you're ever going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically how Leigh Griffiths has got to 31 and he's all the man he's ever going to be. And I'd like to see him extend his career somewhere and find a wee bit of peace in himself in that, Paul, but I don't know. It's just, what was that other guy that was at Hibs a while back, with all the tattoos in his arm and that went to Russia?
Yes, I do.
Gary O'Connor.
Yeah.
I mean, Gary O'Connor, he wasn't a great player. Leigh Griffiths was a far, far better player than Gary O'Connor, but there's another one that kind of lost his way, kind of hanging. Never actually the career that he should have had and things
He
like
should
that.
have, Mark. Not just for Celtic either, Mark. Like Leigh Griffiths should have been like one of the greatest Scotland strikers to play on the Scottish jersey, Mark. Do you know what I mean? But like, if you look back in his Scotland career, the only two goals that I can think of him is the two goals he beat Hart with those two free kicks, and that's about the only thing he did in the Scottish jersey, really, Mark. Do you know what I mean? You know, he never took an opportunity when it was given it to him. Do you know?
It's hard as well, Paul, playing as a sole striker for Scotland when they weren't actually. I mean, they're not very good teams, even you know what I mean. But Griffiths needs bed in the box kind of thing, and he'll score you goals. So I wouldn't really hold anything against Scotland against them, but just that. I mean, I said, Paul, see when they signed him, I said to you last night we were talking about him, I said it on the forum, this isn't going to end well. Whether it takes a year, 2 years, 3, it isn't going to end well, and it isn't, and it's a shame. I mean, even I can get back to when Brendan Rodgers came in and we signed Dembele, and one of the press asked him about Leigh Griffiths, because that was the year that he scored 40 or 50.
just after Roddy Dylan, that's Mark,
and Brendan Rodgers turned around and said to whoever it was in the press, he says, I wasn't here last season, and you've got to think, why is Brendan Rodgers coming into a club, do you know what I mean, and writing off the top striker for the year before as if he was for me that was a kind of put down towards Griffiths, I thought. I said that to you before about Rodgers saying that, it's as if.
But you think, Mark, was that the kind of maybe the part that Leigh Griffiths kind of lost his way then after that, maybe after Brendan Rodgers' side that said that? You know,
Well, even maybe down to actual. I mean, he was always on the bench for Rodgers and that most of the time. Maybe it was then that he's kind of. Maybe his heads went down a bit and he thought, what's the point of me knocking my pan in and training when I'm not even starting games? If I'm coming on for 15, 20 minutes, I don't need to be 100% fit and 100% into it kind of thing. I hope too when he's a bit older than that, he kind of looks back and regrets some of the decisions he's made, to be honest, Paul. Because we all do. But I
think he will, Mark. You know what I mean? I think
if the chance that he's had, the chance of playing for Celtic. I mean, he gave us some of our greatest times. I'm not sitting here slagging Leigh Griffiths off by any means.
No.
I'm not doing that. I mean, he gave us some great times as a Celtic striker.
Putting the scarf around the post
things like that. I mean,
back, but you know, it's just sad, Mark, that the way it went. Do you know what I mean? That
it's like an old punch dunk kind of boxer, isn't it? It just seems to be.
You know,
trying to carve out getting a final kind of payday, or where's he going to earn the next wage fee kind of thing.
Yeah, and like they terminating his contract, Mark, like that looks bad on any player, Mark, when you get your contract terminated, Mark. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's something me anyway, Paul. The thing about that is, I think Celtic's done the right thing, because it's now allows Griffiths to go and get a longer term contract and have a bit of a future. Rather than he's waiting to the summer.
Stability for himself.
That's what I mean. A bit of stability. Say it is Hibs. Say it's St Johnson that come in from or something like that, and give him like an 18-month contract. At least he's got something there for the 18 months. And don't forget, he'll have been paid off by Celtic. He'll be his contract paid up. So.
And of course, then Mark, it does free money up for Celtic as well. Like so. It's a win-win for Celtic. Brian has said, don't forget Ange's two biggest mistake in his opinion. Griffiths' 1-year extension and Bolingoli after the whole Convote. Like Bolingoli, Mark, is another issue altogether, because, you know, where does his future hold at Celtic, Mark? Because you could clearly see that he's not part of Ange's plans.
I don't think he'll be here by the end of the window, Paul. And we've said that, we've just spoken about that, Brian, about getting Griffiths that year's extension. Was it maybe because we were just down to the bare bones and had nobody else? Let's be honest, Paul, I think that's why we gave Ralston that year's extension, I think. Yeah. And then he's proved his own rang and he's ended up getting his long-term deal. I think he signed a new 5-year, 4-year deal, hasn't
he? But Mark, what I was asking myself, like, is, and like, how will Celtic supporters remember Leigh Griffiths? Like, I mean, a lot of fans, Mark, like, were pissed off last season, Mark, with the attitude of players, and a lot of people, Mark, kind of turned their attention to Leigh Griffiths as well, Mark, like turning up unfit and being Leigh Griffiths being like 123 goals, Mark. Like that's a good record. It could have been more, Mark. Do you know what I mean? You know,
Paul, he could have probably scored 200 goals for Celtic. When you think of the amount of games that he's missed, the time he's missed, plus if he'd been knuckling down, he's only 31. He could have had another 2 or 3 years at Celtic if he was keeping himself fit and interested, kind of thing. But at time, Paul, time's a great healer. Do you know what I mean? We all get a wee bit misty-eyed when we think back about things, and Leigh Griffiths, for me, Leigh Griffiths will always be I wouldn't say he's a Celtic legend, but I think in years to come, I think Celtic fans will respect him and like him for what he done for the club.
But what does it say about Ange, Mark? I mean, like, what's it say that the type of manager he is, Mark? Is it the type of manager like we get now, Mark? Have we seen like a side of Ange, Mark, now that we haven't seen yet? Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't fuck with the dressing room or you're out, kind of a thing, Mark, is it? You know?
That's you just guessing that it's something that's been on in the dressing room. You can't, sir.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're,
I just think Ange is just seeing it awful. He's no fit or anything. And he's probably not even the type of player that Ange would have in his starting team. Because obviously he's no going to. I mean, he does do a high press, but it's like one run and then he's blown out his pass basically into it. I think Leigh
Griffiths and Mark knew anyway himself that when Celtic put him out on loan, that his Celtic career was over. I think he was.
I mean, see, for all we know, maybe Leigh Griffiths has asked to be released for his contract.
Yeah. There's always kind of two sides, Mark.
I mean, he's maybe due 6 months' money, and he said to her, "Can Find me up, give me 3 months' money and I'll go the new kind of thing.
So moving on, look, all we can say like is that look, best of luck to Leigh Griffiths. 123 goals mark is quite incredible and could have been more. Whatever the future takes Leigh Griffiths, I hope it doesn't backfire marking us that he scores against us in an important game with whoever he moves that. So now we're going to be looking. So when I was looking through the internet last night, Mark, I came across a player, Marvin Shevard. Do you remember him?
Aye.
And a young player signed by our then head of recruitment, our head scout, and our former CEO Peter Lowell. So many young players were signed by Peter, who was supposed to be the next big thing, but never got a patch through to the first team. So I decided to do a piece on the signings that Peter Lowell did over the years, and how would they fare, Mark, under Ange now, Mark, if they were still with us, like considering how many players, Mark, we saw given a chance, like due to injuries, Mark, but they were still given their chance, Mark, and they showed us, at least we were able to see them, Mark, and make a judgment on them. Do you know what I mean? Like there was players who slipped through the ranks there, Mark, that we didn't even see.
I never even got a glimpse of them.
Yeah. So we're going to go back to the start of Ronnie Dyler's last season. The young players in and around his squad was Owen O'Connell, now 26. He's playing down south with Rochdale. A gifted young Irish lad and comes from my local town of Cork City, making 7 substitute appearances during his time at Celtic until Brendan Rodgers left him go in 2017. O'Connell recently was described by Brendan Rodgers as a player who has a defender's brain and who has a calmness about his game and who can play out through the box. A player, Mark, who I saw in 2016 playing for Cork City, and I always thought there was something there, Mark. But like, there's a player, Mark, who I know, Mark, and I know he's a gifted player and he can play. He's a type of defender now, Mark, that we need, who can play with his feet.
Rochdale.
Yeah, he plays at Rochdale now.
What league are they in?
Rochdale are in the second tier. Paul O'Connell's, Terence is right, Paul O'Connell's cousin of the Robbie. But Mark, he was a young player, Mark, who was signed again through the years, and 26 years of age. He was described, that's the point I'm looking at towards Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers said about him, he was a gifted young lad, a player who has a calmness about his play and has a football brain. But then again, Brendan Rodgers let him go. Do you know what I mean?
Aye, it's the same as well, Paul, that Marion Fed you're talking about. Was that the winger that Brendan Rodgers says he came out, said he didn't know anything about?
Mm-hmm.
And yet a couple of days later it came out that Brendan Rodgers had spoke to the lad before he signed. Brendan Rodgers, see, so, I mean, I think Brendan Rodgers, he just plays the game. It's that story with Danny McGrain. Do you mind that one when he first came in? About Danny McGrain going to his off and all that carry on. It was proved that was all just a complete nonsense as well.
Mm-hmm. And he when he signed for Leicester, he said he remembers going to the stadium as a young lad. Really said. Next up, Mark, was in around this time was a fellow who actually know and we saw play against us was John Fendley. He was in Celtic between 2000 and 2016. Before moving on to Greenock and then kind of playing most of his career at Kilmarnock, now playing at Philadelphia Union. At best, Mark, I think Fendley was kind of always looking in and seeing the way he's play. He was always kind of suited to a mid-table.
Just don't think he was. He was never good enough. No.
And this is like the fact that we saw the kind of type of player he was, Mark. Do you know what I mean? And I'll just find my sheet. And Kenny Radisson, Mark, was another young player at the time, signed from the youth system in 2015. He spent 2015 on loans to Cream Park, 2018 at Dundee United, and 2019 on loan to St Johnstone. A player, Mark, that many of us thought just didn't have it at Celtic. But is a great example, Mark, of what I'm trying to explain, is that we have a manager now, Mark, who will work with our youths, Mark, and give them that leadership, Mark. And Anthony Radisson is the prime example here. What I'm trying to
Aye,
explain.
but at youth level, it's not going to be Ange, is it?
No, but like I'm saying, like we're going to have Chris McCart, and we're going to have this new fella now in McLaren, and then the next step, Denmark, is Ange. Like so, we seem to have a better communication, Mark, than we had before between Ange
There seems to be a connection between the academy and the first team again. For so long, it's kind of seemed as if they've been like ran separately rather than ran in tandem. Into it's as if the youth academy. There's probably umpteen players that have been on Celtic's book, Paul, that we don't even know the names of, kind of thing.
Oh, I think so.
You know what I mean?
I was only going to like picking out the players.
But
the next two up, Mark. We saw them plays, but I leave these judgment up to you because I've never really thought for myself. Was Gary McKay-Stevens and Scott Allen. Scott Allen was signed, Mark, and he was another prospect.
He wasn't young, was he? But we signed Scott Allen. But Scott Allen, I didn't really rate Scott Allen as a player, to be honest, Paul. And
no, it was the same. Even watching him now, Mark, I still don't get that vibe off him. But what about Gary McKay-Stevens, Mark? Was there a player in him? Did we jump ship at him too fast, or do you think at best he's still a Scottish mid-table team?
I think he could. For me, McKay-Stevens could have been one name that he could have kicked on a bit. Like, I know Johnny Hayes wasn't even young when he came, but like Johnny Hayes became, for me, a decent enough squad player for Celtic. And McKay-Stevens could have done that, but for what reason I know he didn't. I think kind of the move was a bit too big for him. The weight of expectation maybe got to McKay-Stevens, to be honest, Paul, because he was a kind of quiet type of person in that, wouldn't he? I don't think he would have liked getting recognised in the street. Half the people shouting, "Oh, right, how you doing?" Or folk are on you on it, all the names under the sun.
Yeah, good thing here.
Terms, I thought I was going to say that.
Yeah,
I think that was just a piss take out of Rangers that was saying Scott Allen.
McKeevan was a bit too soft, Mark. Do you think we're seeing kind of
Ricky Johnson? It was a bit lightweight, aye.
So now we're moving on to Brendan Rodgers, Mark. The interesting thing I found about Brendan Rodgers' squads, Mark, right, when I was doing it, that there was very little young players in Brendan Rodgers' first team squad.
Oh, but it didn't take much to do with them.
No.
I mean, we've just seen about Ange and that. Ange's done watching the youngsters training, and obviously guys that are watching the games are saying they're playing the same type of football as the first team and things like that. So there's a kind of a fluidity running through the club. Brendan Rodgers had no inkling to bring young players in, unless it was like your Dembele, do you know what I mean? A young player like Dembele, that kind of age that's going to be a star and put straight into your first team. But Brendan Rodgers never, because he's never had to do that, Paul.
No,
because
that was all done.
It was all the youth stuff done at Liverpool was nothing to do with him. You know what I mean? That was all done behind. He didn't take anything to do with that. I mean, for me, Rodgers is just we used to call it was a checkbook manager, Paul.
Checkbook manager, Mark, exactly.
And a good manager can do both of them. Do you know what I mean? You've produced so many good players like through your academy, but then you're not spending down in England. It's crazy money, but it's because we don't need to. We're producing a player to the level that somebody would be good and spend maybe £2 million on. You get what I mean? So we don't need to spend that £2 million on that X player. So we can go and spend £5 million, £7 million on Y player instead of £2 million or £3 million. Do you know what I mean? That's the way kind of level you've got to get to.
Well, could we not say the same thing, Max, as Pep Guardiola? Everyone is saying is one of the best managers in the world, but when he took over Barcelona, Mark, he already had the greatest players in the world. He had Xavi, Iniesta, Puyol, Piqué was in his prime, Messi was in his prime. Like, he the best. I know you look at Man City, Mark, the only player who has broken into this Man City team since the Dubai owners took over is Phil Foden. No. That's the only player that I can see, Mark, who's ever broken in. And then you look at the opposite
Where
side, Mark.
did Kyle Walker? You know, come through there just
No, he came through Spurs.
Did
He came. He came from Spurs. Yeah, they
What?
signed him from Spurs. Yeah,
I've always just known him as a Man City player.
yeah. And then you look at the opposite side, Mark. You look at Jurgen Klopp, who is breeding. That's why I'm actually seeing kind of resemblance between Ange and Jurgen Klopp, Mark. That Jurgen Klopp has the whole Liverpool system playing his way, and these young players, Mark, are able to, like Ange, Mark, they're able to come in and fit into the first team system without, do you know what I mean? Like knowing what to do already in that position. You know, and people always ask like, oh, the greatest manager of all is Pep Guardiola, but for me, Mark, it's Jurgen Klopp.
I'd say Klopp. I'd even say that.
You know, like what he does for, like, Mark, to put out a second string team and to beat the first 11 of an AC. I know AC Milan, Mark, aren't the team they were anymore, like, but like they still have good players. And for a young Liverpool team to beat AC Milan in Italy, Mark, is a good achievement, like, in my opinion, you know.
But it's a great achievement. That's what I'm saying, Paul. It's like Liverpool are producing players of their own, like Trent Alexander-Arnold and players like that. So that's saving them having to get and they're never going to produce a Salah. Do you get what I mean? They're not going to produce somebody like that for their academy. But see, because of the level of players they are producing, they can afford to go and buy
this one player.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to get at there. If you're producing players, if it's Celtic, right? If you're producing a player that's as good as somebody that would cost us £2 million to go and buy, we don't need to spend that £2 million. You can put that onto a player that's really going to improve your team and take you on to the next level. And that's what. Let's face it, even Alex Ferguson, that's what he started doing.
That's right, Mark. He could bring in the likes of the Cantona, the Yaf Stams, do you know what I mean? The big players.
Even like your Bayern Munich, your Italian teams, they've done it for years as well. They filled their teams with good Italian players, but then bought 2 or 3 superstars to take them at that next level.
But can you see the resemblance, Mark, in Ange, though, like that? This is the right manager, I think, that Celtic need, a one who is willing to give the opportunity to the Celtic players, you know, because in the Brendan Rodgers era, Mark, I have a lot of young players coming out speaking about how they were promised things by Brendan Rodgers when they signed for Celtic, Mark.
That's a constant through Brendan Rodgers' career.
Yeah.
I used to joke about it when he first came to Celtic. So in the Liverpool forum and that, they used to call it getting Brendaned. That's what they called that. They had a name for it on the Liverpool forum, Paul. They called it getting Brendan. All these young players that were told they would do this and do that, and nothing ever materialised. Young players, like, he was playing young players out of position, and it was destroying them. Do you get what I mean? He was playing like, say, a wee right winger. Playing him as like a right back, and the wee guy was getting bullied all day, every day, and it just kind of destroyed. And
that's him then saying, right, the use isn't good enough here. I need 15 million or 20 million to sign a new right back there. Then so, Mark, is it like that's the way?
That's the way it works out.
Yeah. So the first player I had, Mark, is Chris McCarthy's young son, Jamie McCarthy. Look, he now playing at centre back at St Johnstone, Mark. We saw him play, and he had a few good games about us, Mark. Do you think, Mark, we kind of did we let him go too soon, Mark, or was it the right decision? Or there's a player in there, though.
But I think a lot of this, Paul, maybe not down to Celtic, maybe down to the player themselves that they want to get out there and play. Some young players will be happy to sit and bide their time and take their chances and get through the programme or the system. Whereas other young players maybe think they should be playing.
Career, Mark. They want to be playing, Mark.
If it's Jackie with McNamara and if even Barry, now you want to be, that's why Barry went to Aki's. He wanted to be playing every week. But I think that wee Jamie, I'm not saying he's good enough for Celtic, but I think that wee Jamie McCarthy's a tidy wee player, Paul.
He is, Mark. When I saw him play against us now, Mark, was St Johnstone, like he did his job, Mark. I mean, he kept our strikers out.
I'm actually surprised that I'm actually surprised that he didn't get much more of a chance at Celtic.
No, considering that his father, Mark, is there in our youth system. Do you know what I mean? That's why I found it hard to believe, like, that he left, like, you know what I mean? That, and like, he was never given a chance, like, you know what I mean? You think he would, I know you don't,
Maybe that was
you don't want
maybe that was another thing, Paul. What their
that he went, that he
daddy's boy, their
daddy's
daddy's
boy
boy getting
get
picked in that eye.
yeah, getting his game and stuff like that, you know what I mean? You know? Uh, Next up, Mark, is the young lad, Liam Henderson, was promoted to the first team this year. A highly talented lad, Mark, who's now playing in the Serie A in Napoli. Still only 25. I, 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 I can briefly remember him, Mark. I don't have much about him, but you'd know more about Liam Henderson to me.
Yeah,
But you actually rate his brother now than you did him.
I think his brother can handle the physical side of it a bit better than Paul.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that was always real. Was Liam and Ewan's the one that still weighs into it. Liam that left, or was it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Liam left us. Yeah,
Liam, he always looked like a wee boy.
Mm-hmm.
See, he looked like a kid. See, even standing next to other players, and that he just looked like a wee boy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't get it at Italy, Roger, so I've always that shows you what I know. But again, it's like would these players be the players they were if they had stayed at Celtic?
I don't think so, Mark.
It's like people, but you hear fans going about how we lost Andy Robertson and things like that. But Andy Robertson was judged not good enough for Celtic, and at the time,
he probably wasn't.
Aye, but he's went out and worked hard and worked his way up to be playing for one of the best teams in the world. But that doesn't mean that would have happened if he. Do you know what I mean? That doesn't mean that would have happened if he'd stayed at Celtic.
Next up is one of Peter Lord's signings, Mark, Ibua Karazi. Do you remember him? They used to have the blonde streak of hair going down the middle. Deemed, Mark, to be Scott Bung's replacement by Brendan Rodgers. Never really got a look in, Mark, under Brendan Rodgers either. But this is another way.
That was his first signing too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And if I mean right, it wasn't cheap, Paul. How much was that?
It was about 3 or 4 million, Mark. I for him that time, yeah. But he was a player, Mark, that Brendan Rodgers signed. Like, so this is like Brendan Rodgers and the fellow, what's his name, Mark, who came in with Brendan Rodgers, that was doing the character or something like that, wasn't this?
No, that was Dury. This was Dury that recommended Kouassi, Paul. Yeah, was it? That was here at the start.
Yeah.
I get him mixed up as well. Whoever Touré it was there with Rodgers. It was him that recommended this guy to Rodgers, and I think it seemed to look into it, Paul. It was like,
kind of a favourite.
Touré was like actually mentoring all these players for is it the Ivory Coast, or whatever African nation he was mentoring all these players about Europe for like they were for the Ivory Coast. He was like their kind of go-to kind of guy. Kind of on the national team kind of front. National team, that didn't come right there, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was, if you look into it, it's as if it's been a favour that we've done somebody kind of idea.
Like, he was
where is he now?
I couldn't tell you, Mark. He's playing over in Africa again, I think. But he was crap, Mark, wasn't he?
He was terrible. I'm getting daggers here for that slip up there, man. I think I read netting everything now. He was really, Sorrow's a far superior player to him. And we're saying he's not good enough for us now.
Not good enough. Next up, Mark, and we spoke recently about this guy on the podcast, Mark, is Kendu Benyu, now playing in Iceland, Mark, and he recently came out and criticised Brendan Rodgers. He said when he signed for Celtic, Brendan Rodgers promised him a pathway to the Celtic team within 2 years and said that he would work closely with the young player when he joined Celtic. Highly regarded at Ipswich at the time, Mark, and a highly regarded signing by Celtic as a real cope when they got Benyu. That's the purpose, Mark, I'm trying to get at, Mark. This is a young player, Mark, who at the time, Mark, was highly regarded down south. And then we signed him, Mark, and promised the world to join Celtic.
Did he ever actually play for us, Paul?
No, never. Not one appearance, Mark. Not one appearance. And the reason I put him in, Mark, is because he came out about 3 weeks ago when we said in the podcast, Mark, and he ripped into Brendan Rodgers like that. Brendan Rodgers practically destroyed his career. You know, as I know he's over in Iceland, Mark, in the second tier over in Iceland, to just to get game time. He said at the moment. You know,
He must still be quite young as well, Paul.
24.
I thought maybe he was
24.
young than that.
He signed
He came with kind of a bit of reputation. He'd been a good young
reputation,
player.
yeah. Good young player, Mark, at the time, yeah, and he was highly regarded and like promised the world to come for us, Mark. Promised the world, and there you have it again, Mark. That you know, and I think that's the biggest problem, Mark, under Brendan Rodgers and Lee Lennon, Mark, and Peter Law, Mark, is promises to these young players to sign for Celtic, and that's what has given Celtic a bad, you say, reputation, Mark. No, out in the trade. Like if you're a young player, Mark, and even before Ange came, Mark, like just you said before, like I think you'd be mad to come to Celtic, Mark, if you see all these young players leaving.
Oh, aye, definitely, Paul. You need to consider. I mean, even imagine it was your own kid, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right, you'd love your son to sign for Celtic, even as a youngster, even or sign for Celtic, even if he doesn't make it there. Celtic produce players that are going to get a career out of football, Paul. Do you know what I mean? Even if it is dropping down to a lower division or whatever, but a lot of it would be like your heart ruling your head, because you would think to yourself, well, what if he goes to say Hibs and he's going to be playing every week at Hibs? Instead of when his time up at Celtic, he's going to have to look at Andy Robertson away to Queen's Park.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's been a long road for Andy Robertson to win the Champions League. You know what I mean? It's kind of the old-fashioned road. He's away learned his trade and became a much, much better player. And it's all about timing as well, Paul, with these kind of things. Because is the move right? Is it going to be the right move? Because it can just as easily fall on its arse for them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing son, you need to get a thought, and you need to know that there's going to be a chance of them going to make it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Another player, Mark, in around this time was he's now at Bayern Munich, and he seems to be getting promoted kind of every year within the Bayern Munich setup. And another player, Mark, who kind of said what we all believed that knew at the time, Mark, that there was no passe, was the young lad Morrison, Mark. He's another player who came out and said that there was just no plan there for him. Like Bayern Munich put a plan down for him for every year. Like I know, Mark, as a young player, you're not going to refuse Bayern Munich either. Do you know what I mean? You know, but the fact is, Mark, they gave him a plan. They showed him what.
He did a full presentation set up for him and his family, Paul.
Yeah.
Celtic stuck a contract in front of him and says, "Here's your contract." Bayern Munich had this big fancy presentation, invited his family out to show him what they were doing, what their plans were for him, and as long as he worked hard, how he was going to progress through their system. Mm-hmm. And I just says it's Bayern Munich, Paul. So even if it doesn't work out for him at Bayern Munich, he's going to go somewhere and he's going to be a hell of a lot better player than he would have been if he stayed at Celtic. Even if he had been getting games with his, Paul, let's be honest about it. It's a Bayern Munich, it's a different level really, isn't it?
It is, Mark, like considering how you look at Bayern Munich. They're another club, Mark, who always had players coming through their systems. You know what I mean? They always produce players through their systems. You know. I
bet they're wise as well, Paul.
Yeah.
That's
they go find the talent, Mark. They go looking for the talent.
See when Rangers were doing their 9 in a row, Rangers signed a barrel load of players, Paul, that weren't really at the time. They weren't good enough for Rangers. If Rangers were aspiring to win the European Cup, see guys like Derek McInnes, Ian Ferguson, people like that. But these were like the best players in Scotland. Mm-hmm. So the Rangers are they were good enough, like in Scotland. What I say, they're good enough at SPFL level for us, our players we spoke about. Not good enough if you're looking to make inroads in Europe. Mm-hmm. And that's something that Bayern Munich do well. They pick the talent, young talent up in Germany as well. And that's what Celtic should. We're going to get into a Lewis Ferguson debate about anything like that, but Bayern Munich, when they let Lewis Ferguson leave, do you get what I mean? They'd make sure that if he was leaving, say, a Dortmund or whoever, they'd be in there for him, kind of thing, just because he is the best young player in the country. Yeah.
Another player, Mark, signed on loan at the time by Brendan Rodgers, now 25, recently released by Chelsea. Kind of didn't really kind of make an impact of Celtic trouble through injuries throughout his time at Celtic is Charlie Madunza. We spoke about him recently, Mark.
Asunder.
Yeah.
Aye. A
And
bit attitude, Paul.
big, and that kind of continued throughout his career. And I'm like,
that was under Rodgers, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, see that I minded this at the time when I spoke to Ed too about it and that, but he's well in at Chelsea, and it was meant to be that he was coming up here for Brendan Rodgers to try and help him get his attitude back on track. He always had a bit of an attitude problem at Chelsea. And one of the reasons that he got sent up here was that Brendan Rodgers was seen as somebody that could sort that out in him. And again,
never did. When I was looking at Mark, I actually think his career's finished through injury, because he did have a bad injury last season, and Chelsea released him because he never kind of recovered from the injury. And he's actually
just let him go. I'm surprised, but that's his Chelsea contract just expired, didn't it?
Because he even asked Peter Cech. Peter Cech now is one of the top dogs in Czech. Could he stay and train for free just to see if he can get back to playing football the way he wants to play? And they told him no. So that's saying, I actually think, Mark, he's actually finished. His career is actually finished.
And that's a shame. You don't like to hear that about any player, especially a young
lad, 25, Mark, only 25. But Mark is going to and you see it now with a lot of young lads, Mark. Like in any club, Mark, look across football. Like wages has a lot to do about the mentalities of young players. You know what I mean? Like they're on way too much money, Mark, for a young player down in that Premier League, Mark, and they don't know how to control that. They're getting bad investments done by agents, or do you know what I mean, or accountants, Mark, investing money. Do you know what I mean? It's a lot of a responsibility for a young lad to be on a lot of money down that English Premier League.
Paul, I mean, guys working in that, when I was working, I was well off in that, Paul, but that kind of well off, you can't get your head doing that.
No.
I mean, there's young guys down there, like 19, 20-year-old, and they're staying in like £3 and £4 million apartments. They've got their own private chefs and all these jazzed up motors and things. I mean, see that Jesse Lingard?
Yeah, sure.
One of the biggest idiots in the game, the new man. I can't go him as well.
What did Roy King say about him? Spend more time in your football than trying to do a clothes range or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like Roy King said, you're either a footballer or you're a designer. Which are you? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, Roy Keane would know, because he worked with guys. I mean, look at Beckham. Beckham was probably the first modern superstar in football and all this. Roy Keane should say about it. But these guys still went out producing the park.
Yeah.
And that was the difference. They could get away and do all the posing and camera model shots they wanted and all that. But when it came to crunch, they were on the park and they were winners.
At the time, Mark, Mickey Johnson was actually brought into the first team fold, still only 22 and still at Celtic, a player who divides Celtic supporters. Is he good enough? Is he not good enough? But Mark, he's still at Celtic, and we've seen him put in some good displays this season when Yacht was finished. I get the impression he's trying a little bit too hard sometimes, but can you maybe think Ange can maybe...
Honestly, I quite like it. That's what I'm going to say, Paul. I'd like to see Mikey Johnson going out on loan for the rest of this season. Just to get his fitness back. Do you know what I mean? He had a long layoff there for injury, didn't he? To help get that back up to speed, get him playing games every week, and bring him back next year and give him a year under Ange. Because I think there's a player in Mikey Johnson.
Yeah, because
and
he's not going to get game time. No, Mark. No, yeah, he's the prime example, Mark. Especially if he's still at the club, Mark. Do you know what I mean?
I think that would be best for him. Just out and loan for the rest of this season, and then next year bring him back into the squad and see if he.
Because what's going to happen now, Mark, is he's going to be back in the bench because Yarta's fish. We've recently signed Hiase. We've signed Mida, who can play all down that position now, Mark. You know what I mean? We have James Forrest can fit in there. Abada can fit in. We have a lot of options, Mark, who I think are ahead of Mickey Johnson now. And he's going to sit in the bench, Mark, and it's going to be another 6 months of him being, not, I wouldn't say wasted, Mark, but him not getting
No,
the fitness back and get the football he needs. Do you know
he
what I mean?
should be playing every week. It would do him the
Yeah.
world of good to get out on loan and be playing every week, Paul. And even said he seems to be trying too hard to get a goal and get the chip off his shoulder. If he's played for another SPL team, he'll get a goal after a couple of games, I reckon.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
He can only come back a better player for me.
Mhm.
And then if it doesn't work out, then it's time to move on, kind of idea. But
Exactly.
I'm not writing Mikey
Well,
Johnson off.
no, that's what I'm saying, Mark. Considering who the manager is now of Celtic, do you know what I mean? Like, we can't write players off the Ange, considering the improvement we've seen under Ange with Anthony Radisson. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Aye, I mean,
he's been on loan, Mark, for
people are going to probably, I don't know if they're talking about it, but people are talking about bringing Julian right back into the team.
No,
Ange's never seen Julian playing.
No.
He's not seen him training, let alone playing.
no. I think Julian Marks is at least about 3-4 weeks off before we actually see.
Even a substitute appearance for him or anything like that.
Yeah, I do, Mark, because, like, if you look at the intensity now and the demand, Mark, that Ange puts on his centre backs to receive the ball and play with the ball, and you look at Julian, Mark, is that Julian's biggest asset is ball playing? No, it's not. Julian's biggest asset, Mark, is heading the ball. Do you know what I mean? And is Julian going to actually,
He's good with the ball, his feet as well, Paul.
but is he going to be able to come in, Mark, and being out for nearly a year and a half of injury? He's not going to be up to match fitness at all, Mark, for another while.
And he's not even going to be up to Ange's tactics.
No.
It'll take him a bit of a while to get used to that kind of thing as well.
Like, because all we hear from Ange, Mark, is he's not fully fit yet, and we're not, like, what's fully fit under Ange? You know what I mean? So if the likes of James Forrest and G. Marcus and Mick McCarthy, James McCarthy aren't fit enough to get in first team football, Mark, Julian's going to be way off that. Do you know what I mean? You know.
I don't think we'll see him for a few weeks, Paul.
Next season, Mark, it was 2000. We had a player who went out on loan during his time with Celtic. He was known to be making a lot of mistakes, but after a good Euros, Celtic players said we should bring him back. He should be signed. He should be taken. But for me, we dodged a bullet, Mark, in Jack Henry.
Jack Henry was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I've no one good thing I could. I usually look for good points with players in that, Paul, but Jack Henry was never good enough for Celtic. Mind the pirouette he done with Partick Thistle. Can you remember that? Just in the centre. That was. After that, he should never have been allowed near a Celtic jersey again.
Even watching him there, Mark, in the Champions League with Club Blues, like, Jesus, he was making mistakes left, right, and centre. Do you know what I mean? And
he's a Scottish Harry Maguire.
Yeah, and that's what I think reminds me of, Mark. He's prone to make a mistake. You know what I mean? And how could players said, like, how could we sign him? Like, do you know what I mean? You know. I don't know if you remember this guy, Mark. The Aussie Daniel Arzani, still only 23 years old. He was signed by Manchester City and then loaned to Celtic, regarded as the next best thing coming out of Australia. Spending most of his career spending most of his time on loan since injuries. Signed under Brendan Rodgers, but kind of played mostly under Neil Lennon, but struggled with injuries, Mark. I think, Mark, looking at all the players and considering Ange's and Aussie and stuff like that, Daniel would have been with the right manager at Celtic in Ange, because he was a speedy winger. And when we saw him before he got in, it was his first game, wasn't it?
Aye.
He came in and he picked up that injury in the first game.
He looked the part, but it was his first. Did you not come on as a sub?
A sub, and he picked up that injury, and he was out there for the rest of the season, wasn't he?
Was it Hearts?
Yeah, and he's never going to be like. That's why I look at these young players.
Where's he now, Paul?
He's on loan over in the Belgium second tier.
Is he still at Man? Is he still in Man City?
Still in Man City ranks, yeah. Still in Man City ranks. Like, he's a player, Mark, who's never going to break into that Man City team. Like, look at Man City, like, and like any young player to go down south into these
I
big
know
teams, Mark.
I'm saying talk. I'm saying. I mean, would you let your boy sign for Celtic, knowing how hard it would be to get into the team? Imagine your boy getting offered a
Yeah,
chance at Man City or that.
yeah,
Because
you know,
they're going to end up mint it right away as soon as they sign their name on that line. But there's a chances of like having any kind of career over the next 2 or 3 years without being just punted out and loan here and punted out and loan there and things like that.
hmm
But for me, they need to change the rules on stuff like that, Paul. These
hmm
teams, these teams that stockpile young players. I mean,
hmm
was it 2 years ago maybe? I'm sure it was Chelsea, something like
It's about 60 young players out
60,
the loan.
aye. I mean, how many of
Oh,
these 60 young players are ever going to have a chance of playing for Chelsea?
yeah, exactly. Not now anymore. They won't. You know, you know. Still at Celtic, Mark. The next player again. Another player who was promised the world by Neil Lennon. Could have been in around the squad this season after breaking his leg during pre-season. Now back at full training. Back training with the first team. Can Ange change the mind of Dembele, Mark? Do you think? Like this is a player, Mark, who I remember seeing this young lad at like a couple of years back when he was 16 on YouTube, and Celtic were out posting this stuff of him volleying the ball and running a training, and always wanted to see playing a Celtic jersey, and got glimpse of him, Mark. But there's a player in there, Mark. But is it going to be at Celtic? Do you think?
That's a tough one, Paul.
hmm
You know,
I think, Mark, if he didn't
his
pick up that
contract's
injury,
up
Mark,
at the end of the
he would have
season,
got
isn't it?
game
Aye,
time
I think
this
so.
year. You know.
And as I've said before, Paul, him and his representatives, his family were a bit pissed off the way Lennon treated them.
Rightly pissed off, Mark, because I
No,
remember reading
no,
that. Like,
I
yeah.
don't. I wouldn't say that, Paul, because as I've said, you can't. We were struggling. You can't throw a 16-year-old boy into a team and expect him to be a saviour.
It was the wrong season, Mark.
You get what I mean? So
Yeah.
see if Lennon had threw Dembele on and things were still going wrong, Dembele would have took a lot of that stick because he's been that hyped up and that. You get what I mean? And he is still only a lad, so in a way,
But he did.
I
He
can
did
see
do.
what.
He did do kind of what Lee Lennon was telling him. Like Lee Lennon told him he needed to bulk up, put on a bit of weight. And when I saw him
I
in
mean,
pre-season, Mark, he did look like a bigger lad than he was in previous season, didn't he?
it's Paul. It just put me off a train of thought there. It's easier to bring in a young player into a winning team than it is a losing team.
hmm
That's what I see if Dembele had been put in the team, would have crucified him and Lennon probably. I want you putting a young boy in and putting all that on him for if it had went tits up. But in a way, I can see what Lennon. But as I've said, Paul, there's still plenty of games that Celtic can play these young players. So maybe I'm contradicting myself a bit. But and as we said, League Cup games, the lower league games, he could have come on as a sub and things like that, and even give them some game time. But they promised them things and they never came across. So I'm just hoping that Ange can maybe talk them into giving them another chance.
hmm Dr. Strangelove is saying, I think it's down to the individual to make the grade regardless of age. It's a shock race, so I don't see why any player can get at least a very Drago in training for these 10 years. Like it is, Mark, like it's not just down to
Oh,
Celtic, like it's down
I've
to the players as well, Mark,
I've
isn't
said
it?
that before.
Yeah.
But Dr. Strangelove saying I don't know if he's talking about Drago as in like the Rocky Drago, but if you're a professional football player, excuse me, you might never be as good as Ronaldo, but you can be as fit as Ronaldo.
hmm Like a prime example, Mark, of Ronaldo there the other day, like he says, when he was a young player at Manchester United, and if one of the senior players like Roy Keane or we say like Roy Keane or Cantona or stuff like that gave him advice, Mark, he took it on, and he says young players now, Mark, don't want that advice from senior players. You know what I mean? Right? They listen to you, but it's up to them to take it, Mark. And I think that seems to be the problem now with young players, Mark. They don't want to be listening to senior players. They just want to do it their way, or it's
They
that's
want
it.
to owe too much. They want
Yeah.
the big flashy cars, the £100,000 watches and that, Paul, without working for it. Oh, a coughing fit, sorry about that.
hmm
But that's what I'm saying, right? Imagine, yeah, we're talking about Dembele, we're talking about Mikey Johnson. Imagine if they put in the training levels to the level that Ronaldo's trained all his life.
hmm But maybe they are now, Mark, under like we don't see what's going on behind the scenes. Like, you know what I mean? Like obviously Ange sees something in Mickey Johnson to still keep him here at Celtic. Do you know what I mean? And Ange probably knows he can work with Mickey Johnson. Do you know what I mean? You know, like like we're going on to the present kind of thing now between
Their
2019.
terms says that you can have the attitude of Ronaldo. That's what I'm getting at. You can aspire to it. You can say to yourself, I'm never going to be like as good a player as Ronaldo, world class, but I can be as fit as I can possibly be. And fitness is a big part, Paul, of the game, the modern game. We know that.
I read an interesting thing about Ronaldo, and I forget what player was Manchester United player was saying it. He said, but when Ronaldo came in to Manchester United, he was to come an hour before training and do his ball control, man, right before the training. Then he used to do the first team training, and then afterwards, then he used to spend another hour practicing his free kicks. You know, like that's what young players need to do, Mark. They need to be learning the trade on their own, doing this
He
extra.
made as well. Cantona used to do that as well. John Collins used to do things like that, work on his free kicks, you know, when the training was finished and things like that. I mean, you're a guy there, John Collins, right? We've kind of laughed at how he's like fitness is just tunnel vision when it comes to fitness and stuff like that. But there, John Collins is still a fit man for his age, and he's there. I'll get there. We're talking about a guy that put in the kind of years and he's made his money. I moved to Monaco and things like that, and that was again down to just a lot of hard work.
Now we're moving on to kind of players, Mark, in the last kind of Neil Lennon season, Mark, and kind of into the present. First up, we have a goalkeeper who I think, Mark, just doesn't have it to be a Celtic number one, and I think a lot of people would agree. He came into the squad kind of around 2019 under Neil Lennon, was given game time. He's known for saving the penalties, Mark, but Conor Hazard, Mark, has he got it to make the grade?
Hard to judge with keepers, I think, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
He is only young.
Mm-hmm.
Makes keeper, I mean, really, you're talking 28, 30-year-old before you see a keeper at their prime kind of thing these days, Paul. It's hard to rate him off. I wouldn't say he's the worst young keeper I've seen.
But is he young now, like 22? Is he 22 now, Mark? He should be making it nearly a grade stepping up, Mark. Maybe he's another player, Mark, who should actually be sent out and on again. You know what I mean? To a Premier League team this time, Mark, not down the lower system. You know?
Well, maybe. But
you know?
For 22 for me, you're still a young boy at goalkeeper terms, Paul.
Next we have Stephen Welchmark, who was brought in. Another player, Mark, who was given little time under Neil Lennon, but got his breakthrough through injuries under John Kennedy. Proven, Mark, when given the chance under Ange, Mark, can't fault Stephen Welchmark. He's definitely, Mark, one for the future with Celtic, and we've seen that, Mark, by Udinese trying to sign him in this transfer window.
That's a lot of Celtic fans saying Welsh isn't good enough in that. Again, he's only a young lad as well, Paul. I think he's a great young player, Welsh.
Has he done anything wrong, Mark, since he stepped in? Even like in European football, Mark, they made one or two mistake marks, but you expect that from a young defender, but he is solid, like, you know what I mean?
Paul, every defender makes mistakes. Franco Baresi made mistakes. You get what I mean? Jaap Stam made mistakes. A defender's never going to never make a mistake. And young Welsh, I think young Welsh is a cracking player, and it would be silly. I mean, I've seen somebody saying that if they need you for $2 million, Celtic would have took it. I'd have been raging if Celtic had sold him for £2 million.
I would, Mark, especially now, like, I mean, like, we saw him play, like, this is going on to, like, why we wanted to do this, Mark, because we wanted to see our young players being given a chance so we can make a judgment if they were good enough or not good enough. But, like, we've seen Stephen Welch, Mark, and he hasn't done anything wrong, Mark. Like, if not, he's getting better and better. You know,
he's that kind of calm and composed behind the ball, that Paul. He never looks flustered. He never kind of looks as if he never that kind of startled in the headlights. Look, he's never lost on the park. He's reading the game for a guy so young in that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Mark. Like, you look at him. And
Terence saying, I said that the other night, Paul. For me, he's a possible future Celtic captain, definitely.
Like, like a young lad, Mark, and I think he's learning more and more after like of Vickers. You know, I think he's learning great, and especially you look at senior players that's there, Mark, behind him in Joe Hart. Do you know what I mean? Like these young players now, Mark, are learning off these senior players that are there as well, aren't they? You know,
100%, Paul.
you know.
It's only going to be good for Celtic in the long run if we can.
Mhm.
I mean, I can see Welsh being here for a good few years and then leaving probably for top dollar the way his career's gone.
Mhm. Another player signed, Mark. Like, I know we just spoke about him, but he was another player tipped to take over the Scott Brown reins. Played well in his one of games last season, but then was replaced when Scott Brown was fit. Uh, Looks to have even more reduced game time under Ange, a player, Mark, who's always just one step away from a red card, is Ishmael Zoro. I think he's likely, Mark, to leave as well. I think
No,
we're guaranteed.
I think he'll be away this window. Summer at the latest. I think he'll know himself. He's not got much of a future at Celtic now.
You
Which
know,
again, Paul, people said right. I was always a one step, one tackle away from a red card, but as I've said to you before, Paul, he showed. But see, once he got that yellow card, the first yellow card, he showed that he could play with a bit of composure.
yeah.
So why not just do that for the start? Can't you get what I mean? Why not just play with that composure for the start? It just seemed again, Paul was like saying about Mikey Johnson. He just seemed to be trying too hard. I can remember one of his games. It was a yellow card he picked up, and it was out in the left wing. And
Yeah.
but right, it was a silly tackle. He deserved a yellow card, but why was you in the left wing making that tackle in the first place?
Mhm.
It just seemed to have that kind of heedless chicken running about daft, just chasing
I
the
think
ball.
that's it, Mark.
Aye.
Like, he's another, Mark, like another prime example of a player's recommended to Peter Lord, who has no experience in doing this job, like who was signed going on other recommendations from the likes of agents, isn't this? You know?
And Haley boy that Peter likes to deals with.
Yeah, yeah. Next up, Mark. I think this player kind of was he another one, Mark, who had a bit of an attitude. Is Marion Shevin, Mark? Another player who was signed. Mark spoke about him there about Brendan Rodgers, but never kind of got game time, Mark, under Neil Lennon either. Was he another player, Mark, who did he get a royal deal at Celtic, Mark, or was he just not good enough, or
But
did we actually see him
I
play
think
for
he was a good
Celtic?
enough. I think he was a good enough player, Paul. But his attitude was stinking. And then who was it? Was it somewhere in Belgium? He was in loan at.
And he played well over there, didn't he?
No,
Yeah.
no. They said
So was that, yeah, Dave said something about his attitude as well, didn't they?
Aye, and then it just seemed something seemed to click. And the next thing they were all raving about him.
Mm-hmm.
Where is he now, Paul?
He's Club Brugge.
And
No, sorry, no, he's not Club Brugge. He's actually still in Belgium, Mark, with that team. I'll have to look it up. He's still over there, I think. Next up is
something just seemed to click because I can remember reading articles and the manager said he was hiding in training. He couldn't even find him during training sessions. He was hiding in rooms for him and everything.
Jesus Christ.
Aye, well, I'll look that up and send you the article, Paul. He couldn't find him in training sessions and stuff like that.
Did he let him tell him that if he went into the shows in the dressing room, he'll get a senior job in the club?
But then a few weeks later, something just seemed to click and he really turned the corner and he was rattling in goals and performances for them.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if somebody's saying it's just going to up with that as well, Paul, getting into the right club at the right time with the right manager to get the best out of you as a player and as a person and stuff like that. I mean, there is a lot of luck involved in becoming a professional footballer.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes, Mark, is going back to something like, Mark, you always said it, like, you know what I mean? Sometimes it just doesn't work out at Celtic, you know what I mean? It might work out in a different club for that player, but it just didn't.
Look at Chris Sutton at Chelsea.
Yeah.
That's one of the big. I mean, that was a British record transfer fee at the time. I think he scored one goal all season for him, and Sutton himself says it just didn't feel right.
And that was just at the back of winning the league with Blackburn, wasn't it? That time, wasn't it?
I don't know if it was like right after it kind of thing, but maybe I've been But Sutton was always scoring goals down in England. I think it was maybe 2 years after they'd won the league and the money problems started kicking in a bit. But every player can make a bad move. I mean, look at some of the draws that Man United signed early, but I'm saying those good players that have came to Man United and done hee-haw.
Jeez, I say if you actually look through some of Ferguson's signings who didn't work out, like, jeez, I
The amount
say
of money they wasted on Diddy
wasted.
goalkeepers. That
Yeah,
Tabisi, the Italian guy.
I was just about to say him, Mark. Wasn't it his debut against Liverpool? Wasn't it?
Oh,
And
that
he never played again for Manchester United. You know what I mean?
Juan Sebastian Veron.
You
I
know?
mean, we've done it ourselves. Look at guys like Janino.
Yeah, sure. We signed him, Mark. You know what I mean? On the height of being a great player at the time, sure.
I mean, everybody, well, probably Rangers fans would have predicted he was going to
Who
flop.
was the manager at that time, Mark? When we signed him?
Janino, Martin O'Neill.
Was it Martin O'Neill? Wasn't it? It was Martin O'Neill, wasn't it? I think, yeah. You know,
Berkovic as well.
Borkovic, yeah.
West Ham.
Reggie Blinker. My man.
They tried to see the thing about it. They tried to spin. See, it was actually a swap deal for Decanio, if you mind right. And who was it at the time? Was it Jock Brown? Jock Brown tried to spin that as if it was
A great deal, yeah.
No, we hadn't signed Decanio. We hadn't sold Decanio. We'd swapped him for Reggie Blinker plus money, as if we were after Reggie Blinker. It says,
Yeah.
you give us Reggie Blinker and whatever £3 million and you can have Decanio.
So I think the only good thing about Reggie Blinker at the time was his dreadlocks. I think that was the only,
Aye, the cool hairdo.
you know.
But see, everybody, we're talking about Reggie Blinker, I'm going to say, see, I never rated Agat.
Yeah, and a lot of people do, Denmark. Yeah.
I never really. I just thought he was quick, but really that was it. He was just quick. And I used to say, seeing the Rangers end at Celtic Park, and I said, well, at least they'll Stoke now. Because I could have just seen him running all the way down to Wicks at the end of London Road. It just seemed to run and did really nothing with the ball.
Yeah. Another player, Mark, and I had to put him in is my man, Patrick Camilla. No, I had to put him in. Recently called up to the Polish national side. Now playing in the MLS with Red Bulls. I really do think, Mark, we left him go way too soon. Way too soon. You know? I really do. And I think now, considering how fast he is, Mark, because we saw the runs he could make when the ball was played over the top and stuff like that, I really think he's a player, Mark, who would have blossomed under Ange. You know?
As I said, you're the expert on him, Paul. You know more about him than I do.
You know,
he looked at this. He's not a bad player for Celtic. He didn't really get much of a chance, but it just says it looked as if he had something that we could have worked with.
Yeah, definitely, Mark. Like, because I'm still keeping tabs on him. Like, he's doing well, banging in the goals in the LMS. Like, recently called up to the Polish national team, and it's not easy, Mark, to get called up to the Polish national team. Like, and we definitely missed the trick. Like, you consider it now, like, we let him go, and we kept a Yesi. Do you know what I mean? You know, I know we're stuck with a Yesi who is a player, Mark, who's totally not suited to Ange's system. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe it was easier to get rid of Camilla than it was Yeti, Paul.
You know, I remember reading up a report that some of the coaches, and I'm led to believe it was John Kennedy, didn't want him to go, wanted him to stay, and basically Lennon didn't want him. You know, that's what I read up about it. You know, I think, Mark, if you're looking at the way Ange plays now, Mark, a striker who's going to chase down the back four, like press on, Mark, I think Camilla would have done that. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then we have a Yesi coming in, Mark, who won't move forward to the centre circle, or do you know what I mean, just lazy shit inside the middle of the park. Do you know what I mean?
Who would Camilla fit in your Celtic squad going forward, Paul?
I at the moment, Mark, I think he wouldn't start, but he'd be getting game time, Mark. He'd be getting more game time than he would under Lennon. With Ange, I think Ange would work with him, Mark, and I think he would be a backup to Kyogo, and he would be a good backup, Mark, to Kyogo. You know what I mean? Like, our backup now to Kyogo before we signed Dijon, Mina and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I'm talking about the way the squad that's sitting the new.
You know, like,
where would you see Camilla in that squad?
Dr. Straight, like, supporting number 9. support the number 9 mark. He's a striker mark who we'll say like we struggle against. We say teams mark who play back to front, who put 11 men behind the ball, like we saw against Livingston this season, mark, and stuff like that. Camilla could have been the striker mark who we could have had to open up that. His height, mark, he's able to hold up the ball. You know what I mean? He could have been that striker mark instead of us going out spending 5 million on Jake Marcus, who we still have to see the player we signed him. Do you know what I mean? When I know the type of player that Camilla was, and we just let him go. You know what I mean? I think it was a bad move, Anne Mark, and I think it's.
What a cuddle, Paul.
Yeah.
You want a wee cyber hug.
Yeah.
You're getting off his side. You're getting off his side there.
That's the thing, Mark. I hate it about Celtic. You know what I mean? Letting players go too early, and that seems to be a biggest. And that's I thought it was a joy for Celtic. If Peter Law was still the chairman, Mark, and if we received a bid for Stephen Welch and Peter Law was, you can guarantee that Stephen Welch will be on the first plane out of Celtic.
Maybe aye. But again, Paul, I don't know. That's because I think I'd see if Lowell had still been here. I think there'd be a real battle for power between Ange and him.
I actually couldn't see that work, Mark. I couldn't see that work, Mark. Ange and Peter Law. I couldn't see that work.
Brendan Rodgers went up against him and lost it. You know what I mean?
Could you actually see like Ange working with Peter Law and Peter Law signing players, Mark, not suited to Ange's system?
I could see it. I could see it happening. But I don't think Ange would have put up with that.
Well, I think that would have been a marriage destined for divorce from start to finish, like, wouldn't this?
There'd definitely been a battle for the power in the club there, definitely.
Next up, all I'm going to say about this fella is his name is Bayou. That's all I'm going to say. I have nothing to say about him. I think he's another signing, Mark, recommended by Yaya Toure, I think. Calo Toure. I think he was one of those players as well, Mark, that was signed under Calo Toure before he left. Another player, Mark.
I'm trying to struggle. I'm struggling to think who that is, Paul.
Remember the centre forward, Mark, the big lanky. I don't know how I'm going to say it.
I'll need to Google him. I'll Google him now. When you go talk about him.
There's nothing to talk about him. I just use a waste of a jersey. You know what I mean?
Right, aye, I've seen him. Right, aye, I know who you're talking about now. Aye, he's for the Ivory Coast as well. So could have been something to do with that.
He was signed. I think Calo Toure recommended him just before Brendan Rodgers left. And jeez, I've
32 goals in 88 games, Paul.
In his team now.
And not his career.
That's good, really, though, isn't it? Fairness.
To be fair, that is all right, aye.
Mm-hmm. But I just think he's Gamby, Mark.
He's a big, what we call a big streak of piss.
But now we're looking at players, Mark, who are still at Celtic. Like we have Adam Montgomery, Mark, who was in and around the Celtic squad as well. He's another high prospect and another player who stepped into the Celtic team when needed this season, Mark, who, again, I think has another good future at Celtic.
I think so as well, Paul. He's another good young player. But hopefully he'll just get better under Ange and get his chance in the team.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's going to. That's Paul. For me, that's what it's going to come down to all the time. Getting these young guys into the team to get them to even pledge their long-term future to us.
Mm-hmm. Another player, Mark, who just recently left Celtic for West Ham is Oko Flex. And we spoke about him, Mark. We spoke how he was booed when he scored against Celtic back, but he was another player, Mark, and is the prime example of having a manager, Mark, who had just had no interest in youth system. He's another player who, prime example, just wanted to leave, Mark, for the better of his career.
Aye, you can't blame them for doing that, Paul. That's the thing about it. All these young players that they leave, right, we can all have a moan about it and that, and they've went chasing money, but it's their career. So we're surmising and guessing at stuff that's going on behind the scenes and that, Paul. I don't think it takes a genius to work out how Lennon reacts with young players know what I mean, we've said it a million times. If Lennon had still been manager back in the day, KT and Cal McGregor would never have been
No,
Celtic
I
players.
don't think so, Mark. You know, I definitely think they were gone. And you said that as well, Mark, that Tierney would have been definitely gone. Callum McGregor would have only got his breakthrough because of Ronnie Doyle, wasn't it, that time? You know, called them back from Notts County that time and threw him into the Champions League qualifiers, Mark. Like,
young players broke through under Rodgers.
Like, if you look now, Mark, like the young players we have now, like we have young Dane Murray, who I think, Mark, in another year or two will get a chance in the Celtic first team because he looks like another sturdy defender we have in our ranks. We've Stephen Welch.
Is that what it is, but Paul? That Murray. You know, usually a winger.
No, he's a centre back. Murray's a centre back. Dane Murray's a centre back. That's the fella that played with Stephen Welchmark in the Midtjylland
game. Right. I'm getting mixed up there.
Yeah, like, and look, you have young Montgomery, who we spoke about. Like, there's still doubts over Mickey Johnson, but
that's what I'm thinking. Into Montgomery.
Yeah, you've young Bosman Law coming in there, Mark. We've young goalkeepers, like, and if you look back, like, at the two previous managers, Mark, who had no interest in youth, I actually think with Celtic now hiring the young fella McLaren as under 16s manager, our coach team, Mark, seems to be doing well with Chris McCarthy. They're playing the same way as the first team. Like, I actually think now is a good time to be a young Celtic player at Celtic. You know, considering, I think, Mark, I don't know what to say. Like, has Ange actually saw, or someone saw, that there's big problems in our youth system, Mark, and we're trying to fix that? You know?
Well, it seemed to be, Paul, that he is having a look at the full system of the club, but this is obviously maybe a knock-on effect to something Gordon Strachan's.
Could have, Mark, yeah.
We side job today with.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something to do with Gordon Strachan. This is happening. Paul, see, the thing about it is it's happening. That's going to be a good thing.
And I think it is, Mark. You know what I mean? Like you look at, and I think, Mark, a big part of that too, Mark, is the courts league, that the young players are able to play week in and week out in competitive football, and like, my thing, Mark, is going, what's going to happen next season, Mark? Like, this is only a year's experiment, really, isn't it, the courts league? Do you mean, is it going to be
back to, yeah, they need to do something, Paul. It's one of the craziest things in Scottish football that they've done away with the reserve league. Whether it's a Colts league or a reserve league, whatever you want to call it, you've got to be able to have your B team reserves, your young.
And it's not just a benefit to Celtic, Mark. It's a benefit to Scotland. Do you know what I mean? It's a benefit to Scotland. Like, I mean,
that's crazy. Honestly, it's crazy. And I mean, you get women's football league, Paul. You get what I mean? You can't have a league that your B teams are reserves of that complete every. It's absolutely bizarre, and they wonder why Scotland isn't producing good enough good young players. That is a big, massive part of it.
That's definitely, Mark. It's, of course, it's a part of it. Like, you've young players there who, like, they need to be playing. Like, it's grand playing, Mark, under 18s games and things. But when you get to a certain age, Mark, of 19, 20, you need to be playing competitive football to take it to that next step. Like,
it's
like, we can blame Celtic all we want, Mark, for letting these young players, but that had to be a part of it too, Mark. That these young players just weren't getting games. They weren't getting getting friendlies here and there, Mark,
bounce games and things like that. But, I mean, the old reserve league, Paul, it was like a young Celtic, like, probably Charlie Nicholas, guys like that, probably. See Willie Miller. Can you mind of Willie Miller playing for Aberdeen?
Mm-hmm.
Right, supposing Willie Miller picked up a knock at one game and was out for a couple of games against Aberdeen, he'd maybe play a reserve game on a Wednesday night. Whereas, like, Charlie Nicholas is a young boy playing against Willie Miller in a competitive game. Things like that all just helps with progression and learning and toughening them up and getting them used to playing like real men's football, Paul.
This is actually good there, the straight love. I before the European style B team in the lower leagues, Olympic rules, Mark. I think, Mark, that's what needs, because the whole fact of when I was growing up, Mark, in the reserve league, that if one of your senior players was coming back from injury, you could put them down to but that shouldn't be happening anymore, Mark. The reserve league, if it's going to come, it should be all about your youth now, Mark, and progressing your youth within your system. Like, you know what I mean? You can't be putting down players to gain match fitness, Mark.
I would allow that, Paul. No, I wouldn't say you're not allowed to put 6 first-team players in, kind of thing, but 1 or 2 older players just try to pick up fitness. I don't see anything really wrong with that. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can take over these players to the Olympics even, can't you?
Yes, you can take. You can take. Is it two senior players? I think.
Even at that, if you make that the rule, you're not allowed any more than 2 over 23s or so, over 23s or something like that, and you're starting 11. But still, you're right there.
Sorry, there, Mark.
You fall off the seat.
Yeah, I know. I let him out. He was standing by the door.
Oh, it's a joke.
I think, Mark.
There's something, Paul, we need to bring back some form, whether it is continuing this with the Colts in the lower divisions or something. Yeah, they need to bring something in.
Well, like you said there, Mark, like we're back to square one. Next season, what's going to happen? Like, is the course going to be extended for another season, or will they vote on it? Like, we don't know what's going to happen, really, do we? You know?
No, and for me that's important, Paul. Mm-hmm. And again, it's what before the kind of things you want to ask Ange about. You want to ask Ange about things like that. I mean, I don't know, do you ever watch that? It used to be good, it's a bit garbage now, Soccer AM.
Soccer AM, yeah, before, yeah.
I still watch it just because there's nothing else on at that time, but that Ralph Ragnick was on it yesterday, the Man United manager. You should look it up and watch that, and he's talking about how, like the way it is in Germany, these guys like him and Klopp, they went away and started working in a wee steady club down in the 3rd division, doing this job with their youths, and then progressed and learned. And that's how they know all this, how to bring on these young players, constantly produce quality players for the clubs whoever they're working for and that. And it was interesting to hear, and that's the kind of thing that Scotland needs to look at. We need to get away. Everything in Scotland seems to come down to Celtic and Rangers. If Celtic say something, Rangers say no.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? And that's not good for actual development of Scottish football as a whole. There's got to be... See if you've got somebody at Rangers that knows about football, and you've got somebody at Celtic that knows all... Like, they've got to have a lot in common, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I mean? If you Celtic get they say suppose Celtic brings in a director of football or that, Rangers will get whoever's doing their job for them. But they're going to have a lot in common, Paul, about how football should be progressing and what they should be doing. You get what I mean?
For the bit of the game, Mark.
Even how they're even probably looking at it from a selfish point of view, how to make Rangers or Celtic better. But when it comes to the actual full thing, there's a lot they'll have in common, because you'll maybe say, what do you think about this? We've not got any reserve league or youth league or that. It's not a case of, well, what do you think about it? Because I'll just say, nah, we don't need one if you think we do. It's not a case of, definitely, we should push for that. We need to get something in place that these young players are getting a chance to play competitive games every week. But there's too much a division in Scottish football for that to happen.
And that's the problem, Mark, the division. In this, that's a big problem in Scottish football.
See if Ange came out the night and said, we need to get something sorted for next season, we don't know what's going to be happening with our young players with this Colts League thing and all that, so we need to get something in place so that we know, so we can make plans. Rangers fans would be up like that, stuff that, we don't need anything about that. But who we say, do you get what I mean? It's just if Celtic say aye, they say no.
Maybe they are kind of putting these steps in, Mark. Like, we just don't know. The likes of Chris McCart and maybe Rangers Colts team manager are actually trying to sort things out, trying to get, like, we see the benefits, Mark, are young players stepping in, like young Moffat, Joey Dawson came in there recently. Do you know what I mean? Like, we saw players who were playing the Colts League taking that step back because of injuries. I mean, like, you can see the benefit. Like, if you're not a football man, you'll see the benefits anyway, Mark. Do you know what I mean? Like, the benefits are there having a Colts team. Do you know what I mean? You know?
Well, it's like any sport.
Yeah.
Did you put that into any sport? I mean, see if you're a 19-year-old boxer, they're not going to have you training for 3 months for a fight that's not going to happen. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Moving on, of course, Celtic are back to action tomorrow night. After the winter break was early due to COVID. Fans will be back at Celtic. Mark, I think it's good that the fans are able to get back as well. And tomorrow night, it's going to be a full house at Celtic. Back playing, we're back to seeing proper football as we want to see it. It's been a long winter break, Mark, hasn't it?
The disco lights will be blazing, Paul.
Yeah, oh Jesus, more money wasted. But I just thought, Mark, this winter break was just took long, didn't it?
It did. Aye. No getting into arguing about this COVID and that, man. It's no worth the hassle. Everybody's got their own opinion, but for me, it's been proven to be a right decision, Paul. For a simple fact that nobody's been hurt or these games been postponed. They're not even really been postponed. We just brought the break forward a wee bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it seems to have been the COVID situation's kind of stayed in itself. So for me, I agree or disagree, but for me, I think it was the right decision, and I think it's worked with kind of controlling the spread of this.
What do you think, Mark, we're expecting from Hibs now? Look, with Sean Maloney, what are we expecting? A different Hibs to the cup final day when we beat them? Are we expecting Hibs to be a bit more progressive, Mark, in playing with the ball, do you think, under Sean Maloney?
Well, as long as he's been there now, Paul. You know what I mean? Plus the winter break.
To walk on a Mark, yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I don't think he'll go like a pure 10 men into the ball kind of situation, but I think he'll maybe be a wee bit cautious with his approach to the game. Because obviously he'll not want to go out there and get ripped apart. But to the same extent, I don't think Maloney's the type of
manager that would sit back.
I don't think he's. I think he'll have his plan in the way he wants Hibs to play football, but it'll take him a bit of while longer. I'm hoping it's longer than he's been in the job so far for him to click into gear and get into his kind of way of thinking, I think. But I think it'll be a good game, and I do. I'm quite looking for him. I'm looking forward to it, but I think it'll be a good game. But I still think we should have enough to beat them, Paul.
Who would you start with, Mark? I know Kyogo is only injured,
I knew you were going to ask me that, man. I don't see what.
It's hard to take the lineup.
I've wrote about 10 different teams down, Paul, and it's like, would you put where's Maeda going to play? Would you play him out in the right wing? Would you play him through the middle because Kyogo's out?
Well, I don't know, Mark, because I was actually reading reports there today. All right, Ange said Gianmarcus is fit and he's ready to go for Monday. Is Gianmarcus maybe go?
Then maybe throw him in.
Is Gianmarcus going to actually start down the middle and maybe Maeda out the ring during, or is Maeda going to be down the middle, Mark? Like, we just don't know. Like, who's going to play in centre?
Terence put a team up: Hart, Ralston, Vickers, Starfelt, Janovic, Beaton, McGregor, Rogic, Jota, Fit, Kyogo, I don't think Kyogo's. I think we know he's not going to be fit.
No, he's not going to be fit anyway. Is Jota fully fit, Mark, after him just coming back from a long injury? Do you know what I mean? Is Ange going to throw him in? Do you know what I mean? Like, you could be predicting all night, and it could be total opposite to what we're saying.
It's hard to. For me, Paul, it's hard to know where the Japanese lads are going to be playing.
Well, I found interesting, right, of Ange today, Mark, right? Ange said he doesn't want the Celtic fans to consider the Japanese players as we signed 4 Japanese players, right? He made a good point, Mark, and I actually thought it was good.
I didn't actually know what he meant by that, to be honest.
We signed 4 individual players, Mark. Like, they're different characters, they're different players. Do you know what I mean? That's what he was kind of getting at. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't want the term, we signed 4 players from the Japanese league. They're not. Like, he said, the point he was making was, we signed 4 different individuals.
We signed footballers that can do a job for us. It doesn't matter where they came from.
Exactly.
I wasn't too sure what he was meaning by that.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Like, I signed 4 players who can do different jobs for me on the pitch. You know what I mean? I didn't sign Japanese players that can only play Japanese football. Do you know what I mean? That's what he was kind of getting at. Do you know what I mean? You know,
Yeah, just see, honestly, man, see the amount of stuff, Paul. I meant to send you one earlier. It was a headline. It was somebody, a big Leeds United kind of reporter, Phil here, I think his name is. He said on some kind of talk show or some interview or just whatever he does in an article, right? He wrote saying that David Turnbull would be a great signing for Leeds, and then
wow.
right, that's the Phil. He's a well. The Leeds fans talk. They take everything Phil Hay says as gospel kind of thing. The Leeds fans, he's right in with the posting, with the Leeds Post or whatever the paper is, and right in at Leeds United. So they take every gospel. You can't say a bad word against them. But he's just wrote an article saying that he thinks David Turnbull would be a good signing for Leeds. And then some Celtic sites picked this up as if Leeds are linked with him and we better be getting an eight-figure fee for him and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's like me just saying, if I was like some famous reporter or something, but that's like me saying, oh, we should go and sign X player for such and such, and the next time people are taking it as gospel.
Yeah, well, that's like, Mark, I think anyone can put out a tweet now, Mark, on Twitter or anything like that, like, and it's just going to grow legs, isn't it?
Aye, but just that thing you see to something. Basically, as it's clickbaiting, you read the headline of an article and then see if you get into actually what the article's about. It's getting nothing at all to do with it. I think that's what's happened with me with that headline with Ange saying about the Japanese players. I kind of get a bit lost in what it was actually about once I kind of try and read up on it.
I think Gucci, Mark, will start instead of Bison. I think that's the one area, Mark, and I always said it. I know Bison has done well there and stuff like that, but Ange wants to play fast, Mark, and he wants to play faster. Do you know what I mean? And I think Gucci was signed for that reason only, is to slit in that role so he can move the ball as fast as possible to the Celtic forwards. You know, I know
just the new terms he's saying there about Hitachi, he's played in the left wing as much as he played in the middle. And just came out himself and says he's got to play as an attacking midfielder.
So I think Mark maybe
that's what I mean. But I don't. Right, we could probably pick our back line. Right, our back line for me, I'd go with Hart, Juranovic at left back, Ralston right back, Starfelt, Vickers. In the midfield, McGregor's going to be starting. But see, really, after that, Paul, you're struggling
Mark.
Aye, to predict.
But Ange has brought problems on himself, Mark, but he's brought good problems on himself.
Definitely. And see the thing about that as well, I think it was Rodgers that brought in the team sheet instead of coming out as in the formation, it just came out as a list of their numbers. And it was to like confuse the opposition, supposedly. That's the way the team sheet came out.
I mean, Lennon.
I bet for me that's what it's going to be with Ange.
You know,
you're going to see the team sheet, Paul, but you're not actually going to know who's actually going to be starting where.
Yeah.
Until you see the actual team line up on the park.
I'm actually looking forward to Mark tomorrow to actually see the lineup and see what shape Ange has plans for these new signings. Do you know what I mean? You know,
I think the Derby game will be I think that Ange will be 3 points. That'll be the main focus. But I think the Derby game, Paul, is when we're going to see Ange actually showing us this is my top team.
But speaking of the Derby, Mark, look, we talk about more thing because I think Ange is kind of waiting until the 22nd of January to this. That's when the 22nd of January is when the Japanese will name their squad for the upcoming internationals, right? The 22nd of January. So every Celtic fan's going to be on Twitter. That's when they're going to name their squad.
Right, Paul, I put it on my phone earlier on. The only Japanese player that had any chance of getting in that squad's Kyogo. The other three's got no chance. Two of them's not a kid. Maeda and one of the other ones haven't had a cap for 2019.
Yeah,
The other one hasn't had a senior cap at all. These players are never going to be called up to the Japanese squad.
You know, so
Which you've got to say as well, Paul, is a bit concerning.
it is, Mark. It is. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I'm really, really excited to see Maeda playing. I really am.
Considering what we saw of him, Mark. And
I mean, why has he not been near the Japanese team for yeah?
No, and that is a concern. I consider he's top goal scorer in the Japanese league as well. Like, you know what I mean? You know, is there something going on there, Mark, between him and the Japanese FA? We don't know about. Do you know what I mean? There could be numerous reasons why he's not in there. Do you know what I mean? The lads are saying as well. It's actually 5 subs now. From now on, Mark, till the end of the season.
Aye, that's a good thing as well, Paul. Even at that, Paul, even another youngster just getting in the match day squad and sitting on the bench and maybe getting a wee 5-10 minutes at the end. I think that should be just brought in. That should be a full-time rule.
I think so, Mark. I think
I would even go as far as 7 subs, Paul.
You know,
a lot of people are like, aye, probably, but no, you're not allowed to make the 7 subs, but you know what I mean? You've got a 7 a choice of the 7.
Can you make you can make a concussion sub? No, can't you? Is that in Scotland or is it just down in England? Is that a rule? Is it?
I don't know, Paul. Maybe one of the guys in the chat will know about that. I don't.
Can you make a concussion sub now or something like that? I read about that before. I don't know. Is it actually a rule now or something like, you know, that you can make a concussion sub?
Well,
you know,
that's common sense as well, really, isn't it? But I would go as far and say, look, 7 subs on the bench, but you're only allowed to make 5.
Yeah, definitely, Mark.
Because am I right? It's even down to your keeper. You're not going to sub your goalkeeper unless he gets injured. But see if your goalkeeper gets injured, that you've lost a sub right away.
Who do we know who's back, Mark? We know Hart's back, Julian's back, Yotta trained the other day, Dembele trained the other day. What about James Forrest, Mark? Do we know?
He trained as well, I'm sure, Paul. I'm sure he's back as well.
I mean, we've practically, Mark, a full strength squad bar Kyogo. Like, I was looking at Kyogo, Mark, the other day. You have to think about it. He hasn't had a rest practically for a whole year. Between the Japanese league coming to Celtic, Mark, and I mean he has no break, and like you expect him to be picking up these little injuries, Mark. Really, don't you? You know, and he's not fully fit either, Mark. Do you know what I mean? And that's the reason why I think Ange had to play him in the last 2 games, Mark, because of the lack of depth, Mark, within our squad. Like, you know what I mean?
And he volunteered for it himself, Paul, for what I've read and what I've heard, so. It's not as if Ange forced him to play. He said he was fit enough to play maybe only an hour or so, Paul, but it was just unlucky that he got picked up another injury. Yeah. It just shows you again the type of person that he is.
Character he is, Mark, yeah.
If he thinks that I can give you a good hour, he'll go out there and do it. A lot of modern professionals, you know what I mean, Paul? Oh, that's me, I've got a wee sore knee there, I can't train for 2 weeks and stuff like that.
What are we looking at, Mark, tomorrow? Think Celtic will win it, or will it be tight, or are we expecting...
No, I expect Celtic to win. Just even if I've got the Celtic Park, Paul. I'd either 2-0 or 3-1 I'll go for.
Because we really can't afford, Mark, to be dropping points now anymore, really, can we? We have to be kind of winning all our games now to get a good run again and continue that and bring it into the derby and win the derby and start closing this gap and closing the gap, Mark, and putting pressure on Rangers and see how Rangers cope with the pressure back on them now.
Aye.
You know?
Don't even bother with their doing, Paul. Just go and do what we need to do, which is win games.
Win games, yeah.
And I don't see there's any real problems in more night, to be honest.
No, I don't. That's it for tonight, folks. But before we go, something I wanted to say, something that hit me, and Terence is on the live chat tonight. He hit us at home in Ireland I like to wish my condolence on to Ashton Murphy's family, a young 23-year-old woman who was out running at 4 p.m. last winter in the park before she was attacked and murdered. A sad day, Mark, for Ireland as a country. You know that a young woman can't go out and run out in broad daylight and get attacked and murdered. You know, it's
Heartbreaking, it really is.
shocking.
You can't imagine having to get through that, Paul.
No, it really has shocked the nation of Ireland, Mark, and I just wanted to pass my condolence on to the family of Ashton Murphy. Mark will close the show.
God bless her. Anyway, Paul, it's really, really sad that I've seen it on the internet and then we spoke to us about it. It's just some sick people out there, Paul, you know what I mean? Just hopefully they find out who it is and the law deals with them accordingly anyway. But, right, thanks very much, Paul, for everything tonight and everything you do, you know that, buddy. Thanks everybody who joined us in the live chat. Really enjoyed it again. Tonight. If you know, remember, hit the like button. If you know how to, please leave a comment in the comment section. Hail, hail, God bless and good night.